Today's guest is golf photographer Brian Oar. Brian, how are you doing? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing great, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for coming on. So, as we just said off air a little bit, you're not just a golf photographer, you're a man of many different talents. So give us a little bit of background into yourself and how you maybe got into the photography side of golf courses and golf in general.
Sure. Well, a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But a lot of us, how a lot of us started in golf, it was either our parents or grandparents. And my dad was an awful golfer. He was horrible. But his mom was married to a golf pro who did a lot of teaching and played in tournaments and stuff. So I didn't get much from my parents, but I got a lot from my grandma. And she lived close to this, dinky little golf course in where I grew up. And so she kind of got me into and she would always play, when we'd go at sunrise. She was up, whatever. It was so such a memorable thing for me, because it was like showing up to the golf course, smelling fresh cut grass. And I remember smelling like cigarette smoke, bacon. It's all these really weird smells that I just loved. And then when the first tee was like pointing towards the mountains, and it seemed to be that she would always tee off. I don't know if she had a standing tee time or not, but she would always tee off right as the sun would come over the top of the mountain, and it just pushed this light onto the first hole. And then there was a par 3 that was right that you'd walk by that was over the lake. And I remember just being a kid and being like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever been. And so I think from a really young age, I got that visual love of what golf looked like in morning and evening light. And I always loved it. So, I learned the game from her. And she was super mellow and patient. And, I was just a kid. I mean, I don't remember much of the learning process, but one thing I do remember from her is that I didn't know there was such thing as a gimme until I was probably 15. I mean, I never got a gimme from her. There was no such thing. I mean, I remember carding like 10s, 11s, and 12s, and even 15s with her. And she's like, that's okay. Everything, it's good. We're just playing golf. So it's funny, I kind of learned that way, and I still play that way today. I mean, every once in a while I'll play with people that are gimmies, but when I play with my friends, pot them all in, man. That's all there is to it. So that's kind of how I got my start, in terms of just being kind of addicted to the game and playing a little more. I didn't play a ton when I was a kid, and I really dropped off of playing golf from probably, maybe once I got to be maybe 13 to maybe 17 or 18. Didn't play much, but we did live in a place where you could play any course in the area for $1. So we did play a lot during the summer, and it was mostly at that time just kind of a lot of party golf. Once I got to be 15, 16 years old, it was sure, let's go get a 12 pack of beer and play golf. But so anyways, I had, bringing the two together in terms of golf and photography, that didn't start until I had kind of dabbled in photography a little bit, not anything professional, just liked taking pictures of whatever, but I wasn't doing anything like that. I mean, I grew up being a skier. I was on the junior national freestyle ski team, so I was a competitive skier up until I was 17 years old, 18 really. And we were looking towards the Olympics, and I went to all national competitions, and so I was essentially a competitive skier for years. Mm-hmm. So the off season was kind of when I could play golf, when I wasn't training for skiing. So fast forward a little bit, and skiing career is somewhat over. Snowboarding becomes huge, and I live in Salt Lake, where in Utah, and
Mm-hmm.
I meet these guys that are starting a snowboard company. So I start working for a snowboard company in the fledgling stages. And so we build the factory in Salt Lake City, and I start working for this snowboard company, and we get way into snowboarding, and snowboarding is just huge. It just explodes, you know, all of a sudden there's like 200 manufacturers and tons of companies. So anyways, the manufacturing process of a snowboard company, you know, you promote and ride all during the winter, but then in the summer is when you build all your stuff. So our factory was right close to 3 or 4 golf courses. And at the time I was probably 19, 20, maybe 21 years old. So we would work in the morning, and then at like 3 o'clock, everybody would be like, had enough, let's go play golf.
Go play golf.
Yeah, it was funny. And we were all just partying, you know, stoner snowboarders and all that. And so we, you know, we just go have fun and just play golf. And so at the time, I was like, you know, the internet was kind of just starting to be a thing, and websites and stuff were a thing. And so I was like, you know what? I love playing these golf courses. And I remember just being like, I should take a picture of this hole because I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's how it started.
And the thought became, what if so this was after work, you know, we'd play in the evenings, and I just remember being like, oh, I got this digital camera that we were using. It was a piece of crap too, you know, it was like a 8 megapixel or 4 megapixel digital camera, you know, whatever. So anyways, I just started taking pictures when I was playing, and I built a website that just had kind of all these photos on it, and some, like, wasn't really even reviews. It was me just going, I like this golf course because this hole's cool. And, you know, I had some okay shots. So anyways, that got going for a couple of years, and I didn't really do anything with it. It was more just something that I like to do. So I built this website, and a couple of years down the road, I get a phone call just out of the blue from a magazine in Las Vegas called Vegas Golfer Magazine. And they had seen, I don't know if they'd been on the website or what, but I had taken some pictures of a new course in Mesquite, Nevada, which is somewhat close to where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
My mom had lived in southern Utah, which was about 100 miles from Las Vegas. Anyways, so I took a picture of this golf course, and he calls me and says, hey, we want to use this photo on the cover of our magazine. Will you allow us to use it? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, sure. Okay. And they're like, how much do you charge? And I was like, how much do you pay? You know, of course, at this time, I'm like, I didn't even know what to think. I was
perfect response.
Yeah. And so the guy goes, well, we'll pay you $1,600 for the cover, and will you shoot more for us? And pretty much that was the starting of the career. So for me to get $1,600 for a photo that I just loved, you know, I was out there just having fun, you know, playing.
Yeah. So
you know,
how old were you when this happened? Sorry.
Man, I want to say maybe 24, 25, maybe.
Yeah. So $1,600 for a photo for a cover is still,
it was
like, wow.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so the wheels just started turning. I was like, oh my gosh, you know. And so the guy was like, yeah, we want somebody to shoot for this magazine. And so next thing I knew, I had 9 courses contracted in Las Vegas, and they were some of the best golf courses in the country. And at the time, I wasn't really a golf course photographer in terms of, like, you know, photography degree, working for Golf Digest magazine or whatever. I was just this, you know, kid that had taken some nice photos. Anyways, so over the course of the next 3 years, I shot almost every golf course in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So that's kind of where it all started, man. And really, it wasn't, you know, I don't know if it was luck, or it wasn't really luck, because I worked my ass off. I mean, I was the one that was getting up at sunrise and staying till and doing it, you know. Just it was pure passion at the time. It was just, man, this is awesome. I love doing this. And it wasn't even that I was trying to make a career out of it. It was us trying to play free golf. because
Yeah.
I was just a kid making, 14 or 12 bucks an hour or whatever it was, building snowboards. And so, from there, from me having that contact with Vegas Golfer magazine, I met a lot of people that were connected in the golf industry. And that's how careers progress. Is, you meet people that are in the industry that have other connections.
Sure.
And so from there, I got on all these media trips. And I ended up traveling all over the world, shooting for you name what magazine. So
well,
once my name,
you've done a bunch of work, as you mentioned there. You've been with Golf Digest, Golf Magazine, GolfWeek, Golf Journal. So as you said there, you've been all around the blocks in terms of all the best magazines. So it's awesome. Is it just kind of a snowball effect, I imagine, once you got that first kind of break, and then it just all came rolling in?
Yeah, it really was, man. And I didn't really. It was more just access and passion, and me just wanting to see, and shoot some of these awesome golf courses. And the opportunity to do that was just super cool. So I tried to take advantage of every opportunity I had to just do it, just get out there and do it. And it didn't matter apparently it didn't matter that I didn't have a photography degree.
Well,
I learned
at the end
on the
of the
fly.
day, at the end of the day, it's the results that show. It doesn't really matter, I guess, if it's what you're good at. I mean, so how does this sort of thing work for you? Like right now, if you're working, say, for these magazines rather than for yourself, are they choosing the golf courses where where they want to have their pictures and go, right, so we'll send you to XYZ country? And how long do you spend in these countries? Like, do they give you specific instructions for the kind of work you do, or how does it all work?
It depends. I mean, it can happen that way. I've had assignments that are specific with magazines where they send me to somewhere specific. I've had a lot of times it goes through a PR agency or a marketing company, or through a management company, or just a course out of the blue. It's really changed a lot. With the rise of, now with the rise of Instagram, and social media, I get a lot from that. But it was really before the huge rise of Instagram, and it was really mostly PR firms, connections, people seeing my work in publications, a little bit of website stuff, but it's kind of hard
Instagram must have been a blessing for you.
A blessing and also a curse. And a conundrum, because, well, for a lot of reasons. I mean, so the exposure is great, and the interaction and the ability to have courses and marketing firms all looking at it too. But at the same time, the biggest problem for me in the beginning was that anybody could share your work. And so what happened is that you would get some huge account that was selling a product to, they would push out your work, your photo on their account, and that's great, but they're using my work for free to push their product. So there's a little bit of the conundrum, and that's also why I watermark all my stuff now. I put my name on everything, which I didn't used to do. The other thing that Instagram did, for better or for worse, it brought a ton of competition, and so which I'm not afraid of. It just happened to be that now you've got thousands of photographers instead of a very small pool that you had when it was just magazines and word of mouth and some websites. There was maybe a handful of 25, 30, maybe 40 golf course photographers that were names. Whether or not I was ever a name, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me. Because for a long time, I was the up and coming golf course photographer, the up and comer. I hope I've moved past that up and coming title now that I'm almost 20 years in.
Yeah, well, you're the professional now. You're the vet.
There you go. That's right. That makes me feel old, maybe a little bit of gray hairs.
Yeah, we've all got them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Instagram's cool. I kind of think that, now with the emergence of drones, it's really now we've got thousands of golf course photographers for whether anybody's any good or not. And so people were, before Instagram was bought by Facebook, when you had the chronological feed, you could gain followers very, very quickly, and you could build an account quickly. Now that's totally different. So you had people gain big accounts now that, and maybe, there can be good photographers. There's good ones, and there's, just like anything, there's good photographers. There's people that just go out and click and call themselves a golf course photographer, which is fine. Everybody's got a dream. I get it. I think that's great. And everybody should dream big for whatever they want to do in life. But the fact remains is that there's now more competition in terms of what I do. You got to start somewhere. That's all there is to it.
Sure.
And the fees or the money that I make now, there's other people that are out there that can they do the same thing? Maybe not. I mean, yeah, obviously the work speaks for itself. When you see one of my photos as opposed to some other guy on the internet, which one do you want to do?
Sure.
Or which one do you like more? So I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if this is correct or not, but I think one thing I'm thinking of is, I mean, I've seen a couple of people like this on Instagram. I'm not obviously going to name any names, but they seem to be people that are photographers, yes, but they're not into golf, and golf photography is just part of what they do for their work, but they're not actually into golf. So do you think that gives you an advantage? Because, when we just started talking here, I wasn't sure whether you were somebody that plays golf, but obviously you are. And then you're also obviously a golf photographer. So does that give you a bit of an advantage that you're actually in love with the game itself as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's key. I mean, I see things compositionally way different than somebody else would. I see things from the way, I don't know if it's really from a golfer's perspective, because some of the angles are not from a golfer's perspective, but I like to, if you're not a golfer and you're out there trying to take photos of a golf course, you have no idea what the compelling piece of the architecture is. And that's one of the biggest things is, you can go out there, you can fly a drone over a golf course that's nicely maintained. And if you got it in the right light and you take a picture, it's probably going to be pretty good. If you put a little bit of effort into it, maybe talk to the superintendent, maybe go scout a location, make sure it's going to look good. Okay, fine. But beyond all of that, I try to find the most compelling composition possible on any hole or any golf course I can, whether it's from a player's angle or not. I'm looking for that wow composition that looks, when you look at it in your eye or on Instagram or on a magazine, you see a complete picture that makes sense to your brain. Like, wow, that's a beautiful shot. I'd love to be there. And that's the idea.
Yeah. I mean,
I want somebody to feel like they're there.
Yeah, that was something that was kind of really interesting me in terms of what I wanted to ask you then. So let's say you're going next week to do your work. Do you have like a set routine in terms of finding those right shots? Like, would you have, I don't know, go around the golf course first? Is there any particular techniques that you use to kind of get that picture in your mind of what it is that you want to capture with your work?
Well, yeah, I mean, now I'll at least get a good preview of a routing on Google Earth, if I can get it. A lot of times sometimes Google Earth doesn't have the most accurate,
Sure.
rendering of a golf course, but I'll at least get an idea of architectural features, whether it's bunkers or hole layouts, and then try to kind of, if it's something I haven't seen before, then yeah, I at least try to get that. And then I, try and talk to the superintendent or talk to the, try to just understand like what holes are the most wow holes on the golf course. What, so I at least try and do that. Now that a signature hole, which is kind of a dumb term, but it is what it is, may or may not be the best shot. A lot of people, some courses say, well, this is our signature hole. Well, I get to it and I'm like, well, that kind of sucks because there's a house right behind it. So,
yeah,
which, some people don't notice, but when you're a photographer, you're like, that doesn't work, or we got to take that house out, or I got to find an angle that house is in it, so yeah.
I imagine they're giving you that point of view from a golf perspective as well, right? Like if you think about Sawgrass, for example, they're talking about the 17th, the par 3 of the island. So they're probably looking at it from a golf perspective, maybe. And obviously your job is to then go look at it, as you said, from a photographer's point of view. So maybe their signature golf hole isn't necessarily a signature photography hole.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. And a lot of times it does work that way. I can go out and I can find way better shots that marketing wise are going to work better than that so-called signature golf hole that they think is the best shot on the golf course, which it might be play wise or whatever, but from a photography standpoint. And drones have again changed the whole game. I mean, I've been in it long enough now where I used to, I'd rented a few helicopters. I had been in, lifts and cherry pickers, and that used to be the only way you could get height, is to rent a lift or a cherry picker, which was a huge pain in the ass. I mean, trying to get a cherry picker and a lift through a fragile golf course is hard. And you don't get too many chances of like, you can't move those things quickly.
Sure.
So if you pick a spot, you better be damn sure that that's the spot. So yeah.
Well,
and
yeah,
then, helicopters.
I was gonna say, I imagine as well that a lot of it is it comes in a window, right? For example, if you wanted to take a shot of, when the sun's rising on the golf course, you've maybe only got a sort of time frame when you can get your perfect shot. So you've literally got to be ready to go.
You've got a short window.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you got a very short window, and you golden hour, depending on the location of the golf course, and if there's mountains and stuff around or whatever, you've only got an hour really, either on it's sunrise or sunset. So it's a quick window to get those really amazing shots. And that's golf course photography, when the shadows come across the golf course and the light gets a little bit golden, that's when you got to shoot. Unless there's other circumstances like maybe rain or rain clouds or a storm, that can affect light to where you can get different things during different parts of the day. But those are such rare occurrences and so random. Like there's no way you could plan for a break in a storm. You just have to be in the right place at the right time.
Sure. So. I mean, go back to the start then. You've obviously talked about that you already liked golf, but you also mentioned the fact that you didn't have, necessarily like a degree. You didn't study to do what you do. So how did you kind of get better from the start? Because I imagine at the start you had some issues. Not everything was as perfect as it is now. So what sort of techniques were you doing back then? And then how did you kind of educate yourself? Because you literally did educate yourself to then become what you are now.
Well, I mean, once I was able to start making some money in it, obviously my equipment improved, and that was a huge thing. You got to have a good enough equipment that you can send an image to a high-end publication and they're like, yeah, okay, this is it. But I did learn a lot in terms of landscape photography and lenses and depth of field and how to shoot and it was really just experience, man. I mean, shooting 50 courses in Las Vegas in a short span and getting paid well for it was like, that was my internship. You know, it was like,
Well, yeah.
you know, here's some of the best golf courses in the country. Don't screw it up. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth, really, in terms of like big time golf courses, good money. I finally had equipment that was, for the time, was good. I mean, it wasn't top of the line stuff, but I mean, it was good enough to where, you know, the magazine was, you know, everything was good. Oh, the funny thing was, I'll tell you a quick story. So I get that I'm super nervous because I'm working for this, you know, high-end publication in Las Vegas. And at the time, Vegas was just rocking. I mean, huge push for golf and new courses going in. Golf was huge in Las Vegas. So I get my first contract from them, and I show up to the golf course, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pretty nervous, really. I mean, I know I can do what I can do, but I've never worked for these guys before. And so it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I hadn't seen this golf course. I'd done a little bit of scouting, and I knew a little bit about the golf course of where I wanted to go. So I headed up the golf course, and I went backwards. I went down 18, down 17 to 16, which this is at Rio Seco Golf Course in Las Vegas, this kind of canyony golf course, real estate development. So anyways, I'm headed out there. It's early. Sun is, you know, it's just barely becoming light. And I come down the cart path, this hill on 16, and it makes it like basically a sharp left-hand turn. And I learned quickly that cart paths are built, some cart paths are built to go one direction.
Okay.
Because when I went backwards down this thing, I started turning, and I don't know what I was doing, and I don't know what happened, but the cart just kept turning. And I smashed this golf cart into the wall. The front end went bing. I broke both tires. My camera went flying out. I smashed the lens. I went into the wall and broke a finger. So this is my first shot with this with this magazine, and of course it's like my dream job. And I smash a golf cart on my part. Very first assignment, I blow up this golf cart. So, man, that was pretty embarrassing for sure. You know, sometimes you just never know, man. But so, anyways, I had to deal with all of that. Yeah, so I definitely learned by fire, but it ended up being great. Luckily, that shoot turned out great. They loved everything I did. Yes, I ended up having to pay them $800 for the cart. But you know, that's what happens, man. I mean, you know, you just and you know, I at the time, I don't think I was carrying insurance at the time, which was a huge risk. But now, I mean, I've got plenty, you know, insurance would have covered all of that stuff. But it was funny that, you know, the very first time I go out, I crashed this golf like a total rookie. Like I'd never been in a golf cart before.
So what sort of equipment are you using at the moment then? Is it just kind of a drone, and then you've got a camera, or have you got a whole bunch of different stuff now that you do use for your work?
It's progressed over the years, but I have now, you know, luckily drone technology has gotten so good. I mean, even the small drones now are fantastic. I mean, you know, you got a 20 megapixel camera, 4K video on a drone that's like that, you know, which that camera that's on a drone was like the best camera you could buy back when I started shooting. Like there was no such thing as a 20 megapixel camera back then. If it was 50 grand, you know?
Yeah.
So I've got my stuff down to a pretty small pack now, and I travel very lightly when I go. Over the years, I've used a lot of different equipment. About 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I switched to all Sony gear. So I now use a Sony A7R3, which is a 42 megapixel full frame camera. And I use 4 different lenses, just depends on what I'm shooting. So I carry 4 different lenses with me. And then I've owned almost every drone you could possibly imagine, from the very first drones to where in a camera, where I zip tied a GoPro onto the very first one that I could ever even zip tie. I basically took a GoPro and zip tied it to the bottom pieces of the drone. And so that's how I started, because I knew that like drones were gonna go somewhere at the time.
Sure.
And it's funny because I shot a golf course in Mexico the first time when, and one of the photos from that shot from that shoot was just a GoPro on burst mode. And I couldn't really even see what I was shooting because you didn't have much transmission at the time. Like you didn't have this beautiful screen and see exactly what you were getting. It was just hope your drone was pointed in the right way. And it was just firing like every second. It was a stupid way to shoot. But I knew that, if I got one frame that was usable, it would be worth it to do it. So yeah, I mean, now I'm shooting on just a Mavic Pro 2.
Okay.
I mean, it's good enough for anything that I do. I've owned almost every DJI drone you can have. I've had an Inspire. I've had an Inspire 2. The problem with those drones, they're great, is for me they're too big to travel with. Like you're basically taking a Pelican case the size of it's huge. It's gigantic. And it's such a pain in the ass to travel with.
I can imagine,
it just is a nightmare. The second thing with those is that when you take that thing off, it sounds like a helicopter. I mean, you're getting a ton of attention. People look, the homeowners are out on their back porch going, what the hell are you doing? So over the course of about a year and a half of having one of those, I said, I've had enough of this thing. And so I've moved to the smaller gear, which is fine. I mean, you can only get so much in terms of the quality has to be to a certain point. But once you get beyond that, it's very rare that somebody even cares. So, the drones now are just getting better and better and better, and they're going to continue to get better. And so I have such a small gear now, and it's great. I can travel easily. I have a backpack and just regular stuff. I have a backpack, my carry-on, and my clubs, and that's pretty much it, man.
Yeah. So for you, what do you think the next level is going to be then in terms of the photography world? You said there that you knew drones were going to do something like this. So what do you see being the next thing in, say, the next 25 years, technology-wise?
Well, technology-wise, I don't know. I just would assume that everything is getting, batteries and sensors and all that kind of stuff is just getting smaller and smaller and better and better. I mean, I would assume that at some point your iPhone is going to be, as just about as good as anything you can get. I mean, the technology there is just progressing, rapidly. There still is going to be a place for a camera with a lens because depth of field. I assume that an iPhone may be able to simulate that at some point, which maybe it will. Maybe it'll all just be all digital, and then you can manipulate the depth of field however you want.
Sure.
That's a possibility. I don't know. Drones are just getting better and better.
Yeah, it's just because with all things, I think with technology, you always look at it and go, God, this is amazing what these drones could do now, for example. And you always can't really imagine it getting much better, or you can't really imagine what the next best thing is going to be. So it was just interesting to hear from you, like, you look at like what you've got now on your social media pages and your website, and it's like, wow, those pictures and the videos are just incredible. But what could be the next thing? What we're going to get next that's going to blow our minds?
Well, I would like to say that it's my work that I've been doing with Golf Illuminated, and I know that you've seen some of my stuff. It's interesting that you bring that up, because that was kind of a couple of years ago. In fact, it was right around 2 years ago when I started really thinking what Instagram was doing to my profession. bringing all these new people into it, whether it was good or not, but just all of a sudden there's a platform that people can be seen doing whatever it is that they love or whatever, which is great. I mean, that can inspire people to be whatever they want to be. But I started thinking, my work is only as good as the next great golf course. And so I started to think of what can I do in this space that is different and that nobody's ever done. And you can only do so much. I mean, okay, yeah, I can be at the right golf course at the right time with my gear, with the right sets, but that's it. Essentially, there's a handful of people. There's other people that could do that. And yeah, okay, there would be a different composition and people's eyes for art can be better than somebody else's. Okay, I understand that, but there are some other good golf course photographers that are out there that can see good compositions and be at the right place at the right time and know what makes a good shot. Well, I told myself, hey, what if I did this? What if I tried to do something that nobody's ever done and create my own basic something I could control 100%. The golf illuminated stuff happens at night. So I had to invent how to do it. And it took me 6 or 7, 9 months of shooting at night and figuring out like what worked and what didn't. And if it was even possible. I didn't know if it was even possible when I went out there the first time. I was definitely flying blindly and figuring out how to make, I thought it was possible in my head, but I didn't know, what it was going to take to do it. So here I am 2 years later. Unfortunately, COVID really kind of hurt what I was doing in that aspect, because I had a story that is still going, but it just got delayed in a big magazine, and it was to come out last year, but I couldn't get to the places that I wanted to shoot for the piece and do them all in the golf illuminated style at night. So that's still ongoing, and that will be one of my next big things with that project. So anyways, I wanted to do something that was going to define my work in the golf photography space that said, hey, look at what this guy did. This guy did something totally different than anybody else did. Push the envelope of golf course photography when golf course photography was kind of being inundated by all these new shooters. All these new people on Instagram are bringing their, all kinds of different, styles to how golf is shot. I mean, now you're seeing people do all kinds of different styles, which you couldn't do that before with just magazines. You really couldn't, because there wasn't a medium you couldn't take an image and fade it down and make it this real like sepia toned image. You couldn't do that because nobody would print it. An art director would be like, why would we print that? We want beautiful green grass and color. We're not gonna print this faded old looking photo. Nobody ever would. And that's where, that's why Instagram has really propelled a lot of different industries in that fact. But golf, people doing all these different styles and stylized looks of images now that works. So, the golf illuminated stuff has been really fun for me, and I'm really excited to continue it. Shooting these golf holes at night is wildly different every single time. I control the light, so I can do it's been interesting to see what's possible with it. And I can, every time I go, I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
like
been
you said, I
fun
mean,
to develop this piece.
yeah, I was just going to say for anybody that wants to check it out, you're on Instagram with that Golf Illuminated. So, I mean, you can either answer this for that or for the normal stuff that you do as well. But what kind of inspires you then to do your work? Let's say you're doing a trip next week that's for your own website. It's not a contract. You've not got to do anything a particular way, no particular golf course. How would you choose a golf course, first of all, that you want to shoot on? And then what's your kind of inspiration for how you go about your work on that particular golf course?
Well, now I'm trying to get to places that obviously have a landscape that is very unique. I live in southern Utah, which has some very unique landscapes, and I have a selection of courses that are very sort of otherworldly, so to speak. You know, like I live 15 minutes from Sand Hollow, and I can shoot there anytime I want. But really, I mean, I kind of just try to get to places now that I want to play.
Priorities.
But also, you know, that doesn't suck. And luckily, at this point in my career, I'm able to command some of those offers. I don't have to go to someplace that doesn't interest me in playing, but you know, I get excited to go. Right now, I'm excited to just travel at all.
Yeah.
You know, so haven't done much in the last year and a half. So any kind of travel and any kind of going out of my office has been nice. But you know, really, I'm looking for unique stuff. Anything that is compelling landscape. You know, I've got a lot of things on my horizon that for Golf Illuminated that are going to be amazing, and I've got stuff that I haven't been able to release. I've got some courses which I can't name. I've got courses that I've got holes that are going to drop some jaws when I'm able to release those photos.
Yeah,
because they're incredible. Like nobody's ever seen anything like it. They're the thing about it is that a lot of people, if you're not a core golfer, you look at it and you may not even understand what you're looking at. So it's been a little bit that this Golf Illuminated in particular has been, it's hard to convey on a tiny phone screen. So people see it on Instagram, and some people get it. Some people that I've ever seen, you know, this is amazing. But other people, it's they don't know what they're looking at. But what I have found is that the times that the places that I have seen or that I have big prints in, they're amazing. When people see a 40 by 40 print of the Golf Illuminated stuff, people are just floored. They can't understand how I've done it and the process. I mean, it's very cool.
Yeah,
very different too.
I agree, because when I was looking at your let's say regular work, the one that isn't to do with Golf Illuminated, I was kind of blown away by that as itself, just looking at those images and like, wow. And then I saw the Golf Illuminated one and it was like, whoa, I've not seen something like this before. But I think something that's interesting in terms of how you think it works. So let's say your target audience, for example, is people like myself that are going to look at that and go, oh, wow, that's incredible, or I want to buy that, or I want to subscribe to receiving more pictures like that, etc. But how do you kind of appeal to those kind of people that maybe don't think on the same wavelength as you in terms of the photography? Because I will look at that and go, that's incredible, but that's really as far as it goes for me, because I'm not as creative as you. I don't have the same kind of way to think about that photo maybe like you do. So how do you make that appealing to audience like myself that think that way?
That's a good question, man. I don't know, but I'll have to contemplate that a little more. But really, the Golf Illuminated stuff is art, and so I just kind of keep labeling it and thinking about it as art. Well, think about other big artists or whatever, or any art that you like. A lot of it can be confusing. until you really see it and really study it, or you know, and art can be all over the board. Anything can be considered art. So I think that it's more just, I realize that I'm not going to appeal to everybody, but there's going to be a few people that are like, that's amazing. That's the coolest thing ever. And that's fine. I'm good with that, because golf course photography is kind of so niche anyways. But I think also once people see it more in print, or see more tangible stuff in front of them of holes that they recognize, that's where I think it will come in, really, really blossom into its full potential, is becoming an art piece that is so different from what people have seen in the past. So that's kind of where I see it going. And really what I'm trying to do is define my work by that. I mean, yeah, I could go shoot wherever, man. And it would be like, hey, this is an awesome Brian Oar photo. But yeah, there's 25 photographers that have awesome photos of that hole.
Yeah.
Or of that golf course. What does that do for me? That just kind of says, okay, that's great. But so, you know, I'm trying to get to that point of saying, this is the defining piece. This is why Brian Oar and Golf Illuminated put the mark on golf course photography.
Sure. And it's trying to stand out from what the others do. But I think it's good for Instagram, because I mean, I'm not somebody that uses it now on a personal basis, but I did when I was a little bit younger. And I tend to find that everybody, or the majority of people that use Instagram, are just scrolling, and they're barely really taking in the picture. So yeah, I think that, you know, what your industry is doing is going to be and will be really good for Instagram, because again, just speaking from my own personal view, I was like, oh, and I stopped and I was like, whoa, and I took the time to actually appreciate it. Whereas I know 100%, and I do it with golf news or whatever it is, and I'm just like, boom, boom, just get that information as quick as I can.
I do it too.
So I think it's going to be a good thing, because it makes you stop and appreciate what you're looking at.
Yeah, just the you know, the colors are just so different than anything else. And you know, if I do it right, you know, and there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think I've got a pretty good vision of what I want it to look like. And now that I've been doing it, you know, for almost 2 years, I get out there and I have a good plan in my head of what I need to make it look like. You know, true, I can't control. There's some stuff I can't control, but I have a pretty good plan when I go out there, and I've had a couple other people help me in the last few shoots, which has been a good addition to it. I don't know if you just saw the last one I posted, which actually had the ball flight
Yes.
in it.
Yes.
Did you see that one?
Yep.
Yeah. So that, you know, those are the kinds of things that I'm learning that, you know, as I continue to do this stuff, those kinds of ideas come into my head of saying, hey, we might be able to do this.
Well,
so that was kind of an experience at midnight with a friend of mine.
Sorry, yeah, it cut off there for a little second. Go ahead. No, go ahead. It cut off for a little second there. Sorry.
I was just saying that, you know, those are the kinds of progressions, and I don't know where it will end up, but that's the kind of thing that had popped into my mind of saying, hey, I could use this to actually capture golf and ball flight. And definitely nobody's ever seen anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good point. And this is what I was going to say, is one thing I noticed on at least a lot of the stuff that you've got on Instagram is that it's all obviously done on an empty course with not many people, or maybe a couple of people on there. So I don't know whether it's an option, because obviously it's difficult during tournaments, but have you ever thought about doing the actual photography and all this kind of work during a tournament, and even trying to capture, you know, some of the best golf moments on either camera or video while they're happening?
No. I usually don't do a whole lot of like tournament stuff or whatever. It's just, but that's a possibility. I mean, who knows where I could take this kind of stuff. And I've started to be a little more, I'd never really been interested in shooting people. It wasn't really my thing. It didn't excite me to try and do that. I've got a little bit more experience and confidence in doing that now, but I don't know where this project is going to take itself, or where, you know, my shooting will go from here. I'm doing a lot more video now, that's for sure. And one of the cool things about Instagram, I think, is that video has opened up a whole new aspect of what I do and how, of course, just videos just feels different to me. It's a different sort of feel than looking at a static image, which is cool, but video kind of adds a whole nother layer to what I can provide and what I can do. And it also allows me to bring my vision into video, which, you know, is the same thing like photography. Like, you could go out there, anybody that didn't know anything could go out there with their phone and go like this and be like, oh, that's beautiful. Well, is that something you really want to watch? Maybe, maybe not. But sure. I take my compelling golf photographer brain and add that to the video footage. So now not only am I looking for that awesome like still image, but I'm also looking for that, you know, awesome video clip. Cool. I've never done that before. Well, it's only been the last 2 years maybe that I've really started to focus on video.
Interesting. Well, listen, Brian, I'm going to let you go there because it's always been an hour already. It's flew by, but I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. So we can find you all over social, but for Instagram, it's Brian Oar. You've got Golf Illuminated as well on Instagram. YouTube, it's Brian Oar. Twitter, it's Brian Oar Golf. And then you've got brianoar.com. Anything I'm missing off that list?
Nope, that's pretty much it, man. Those are the only ones I deal with. But yeah, hey man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm happy to try and do this stuff. You know, I have a lot to unpack. I've got a large story, so hopefully it wasn't too rambly, and I hope it was an interesting interview for you. You know, sure, man. I hope that your podcast is growing.
Yeah, it's been really good,
man.
and
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of interviews that I was really looking forward to doing, because I think, you know, a lot of the podcasts I see, they're talking with the professional players and stuff like that. But I wanted to just try and get like an angle of every single little bit of golf, whether it's a player or whether it's photographers, and try and cover everything, because I find it super interesting.
That's great, man. I think that's awesome. And again, I appreciate you having me on. I've done quite a few, but it's always cool to meet new people and try to help you, you know, grow your audience. And you know, I wish you the best of luck with your podcast, and hope it goes well, man. I'd be happy to come back anytime. We can talk about whatever.
For sure, man. We'll do it again sometime. And everybody go and check out Brian's stuff. Cheers, Brian. Thanks very much.